Why are we not in this together?
I think the defining chord that runs through South African identity is the sense of exclusion. If you're poor and black, you feel excluded. If you're white and your ancestors were colonialists, you feel excluded. If you're multiracial, if you're colored, and your ancestors were slaves and colonialists, you feel excluded. Everybody in this country feels like they're being pushed out of the box of South Africanness. Our country was built on 350 years of systemic violence. Systemic violence, misogyny, and the exclusion of people. When we start to deal with the emotional, psychological, and spiritual baggage of that, then we'll start to form a country, we'll start to form a nation. But that is real, deep, inner, emotional, loving work. We need to start speaking from a place of love for self, from a place of love for our children, from a place of wanting this society to be what we imagine it to be in our minds, in our dreams. We've got to want something better than what we have now, and want it more than we want to be right.
And when we return, we hear from gardeners who
and everyone is talking like us, the coloreds. No one is talking about us. We, the black people, were being oppressed. Oh, there's white poverty. No one is talking about the white poverty. And I think the issue is resources over racism. Everyone thinks that there aren't enough resources for me. And what happens, even if you look at other countries, look at Greece, for example, look at Russia, the moment they experience a recession, what happens is that they start attacking foreigners.
Of course, there's a resource problem. But in essence, the whole question, why can't we just get along, sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya? It is all about power. Who has the power? And power is not only whether you have political power. It's whether you have economic power, yes, whether you have social power. If you have a white skin in a racist society, you have more social power. And it's a nasty concoction of things that makes it very difficult for people to come together as equals.
Now, so are you admitting then that by virtue of having a white skin, that you have a level of power that I, with my black skin, wouldn't?
I do, socially. For example, if I go into a shop, I know that no matter if I come from the gym, if I go to the gym, and I'm dressed scruffily, nobody's going to assume that I am somehow up to mischief. If I'm a black person and I go to the same thing, people are going to assume it.
I wonder whether we're willing to cede our I-ism, our colorism, our Indianism, our blackism, our whiteism, our Africanism, in the interest of an African identity, which is something that I think is far more compelling than the kind of silos that we are trying to construct. I think that there's no getting away from the fact that the project of apartheid was very linked with white capital expansion. I think it would be more useful to frame our conversation around rather affirmative action, corrective action, because what are we doing? We are correcting what has gone wrong. Reconciliation is not just about, I'm so sorry, I love you, you love me. No.
All right, Sinet, embracing your African identity. Please speak to that first before you make the other point.
Yes, absolutely. We started this conversation with regards to the Rainbow Nation. There cannot be a rainbow if we do not embrace the fact that we are several different cultures, we speak different languages, we have different traditions, and that was the plan, is for each of those to be preserved, so that together it will be a really nice picture. But it all just became one big grey mess, and majority takes everything. And you cannot deny that. You cannot deny the fact that tribalism is alive and well, and I actually think it's a good thing. I mean, Zulu people they own 37% of Natal in the Ingonyama Trust, and nobody knows that the Zulus have an entire homeland in the brand new South Africa. But let them have it if they want, but then give it to us as well.
I want to stay with this point about the rainbow and everybody having their own piece. And maybe you want to speak to that because you want to raise the issue of the Khoi.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying your question, did the Rainbow Nation fail? It was never successful because it was never reality. You see, since Kodesa, this was a black and white talk. You've sidelined us.
So are you saying that there were no colored people, no Khoi people around the table at
No,
CODESA?
we are not included. We are not even like it's here.
They were there.
You have seats. You have seats for whites and blacks.
Sir, could we stick with the topic, please? At CODESA, there were colored people, there were people of Khoi descent.
No, this is not a rainbow nation. We are the rainbow nation, the ones who are being pushed aside. The rest is a zebra nation.
Teresa, I want to go into our workplaces because we've talked about the insert specifically looked at your overt racism. But we're working in the same environments, right? We're all in the same offices. How are we interacting?
Pretty negatively, unfortunately. I mean, after 20 years, one would have hoped there would have been more progress in terms of integration. You know, if I look back 20 years when we first started doing this work, there was definitely far more overt racism. I find it's now a far more covert thing. It's as if we can't talk about race, especially as white people. And until we have this discussion, especially in the workplace, until we negotiate and talk to each other, we're never going to build unity. This is our 20th year of democracy, and we're still hearing about me and my white and my, red October movement, and me and my little coloured thing. Why can't we be united? But so we need to educate each other.
But isn't what Sinette saying is that we need, she's talking about the rainbow, but she's saying everybody in there needs to have their own space, and she feels that they don't have their own space in this country.
I think that, you know, we have so much space. As white people, we have benefited hugely, and we still benefit every day from apartheid. It's nonsense to say we don't.
Part of what happens in these conversations, and I spent many years of my life working on gender issues and working as a gender trainer. And so you'd come and have a discussion about what men and women and how women have less power than men. The men in the room would say, but you're not acknowledging the places where you have improved. And it would make feminists, myself included, feel very defensive. But the reality is that if I am not able to acknowledge that as a black person who has one of the most fantastic educations in the world, has access and political networks, and walks into a room with confidence and will get the CEO position regardless of affirmative action, right? If I don't acknowledge that I have power, right, then we're not having an honest conversation. And then Sinette and my brother over here get upset because the reality is there has been an increase of some black people's power. There has been a new black elite that has formed.
So should we then change the way that we do black economic empowerment, change the way that employment equity is done?
Maybe.
So me and you, who have already benefited, no longer benefit from
what
it.
I'm saying, so I believe in affirmative action, okay? Because I'm also not, I'm not a black person who is so individualistic as to say my power and my access means that no one else must have. What I am saying is that a mature conversation on race also recognizes there are different types of power and that there are shades and nuances in the conversation about power. And when I can accept my own privilege that in a new South Africa, the cachet of being an articulate black person has a certain type of power, if I can accept that and acknowledge that, then I can have a conversation with Sinette because I've given a little bit of what she's talking about. And then I hope she can also hear me, right? You agree?
I agree very much with what she's saying. I think it's about owning the truth of your own story with all of its complexity. So for me, as an educated middle-class woman, I know that when I walk into spaces, I carry a certain currency that is not carried by my brother who can't pee in a toilet that I peed in when I went to Wits.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
But at the same time, I also acknowledge that when I do walk into spaces, for example, going into very poor, disenfranchised communities, I also have to acknowledge that the dysfunction that I see that exists in those communities is part of my historical baggage. I carry it within me. It's in my family, it's in my heart, it's in my choices. And what is worrisome is seeing people who own so much power in terms of land, in terms of resources, in terms of people you employ, in terms of the language that you've taken from these people people and used to create a nation. You own so much power, but do you concede that? Do you acknowledge that? Do you own that? If you owned a little bit of that, it would be easy to come to the table with you. It would be easy to acknowledge death is death, pain is pain. I mean, there were 350 years of conscription in this country. It's only one generation of white men who didn't go into the military. How much pain exists in white families? I'd be willing to hear that more than I'm willing to hear that your pain is your pain only, because everybody in this room is carrying pain.
But I don't believe the debate from our side. 20 years into this democracy, the debate from our side has never been to negate your pain, nor has it ever been about saying that we want back to where we came from. White people voted for this democracy.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't, Sissy. No, they didn't.
Yes.
A handful. Did you vote ANC in 1994?
I'm not talking about the ANC. Please listen. In 1992, white people had a referendum to decide whether they're going to allow the vote. And we gave the vote because we thought that what was happening was
It wasn't yours
wrong.
to give. Do you acknowledge that? It was not your country to take in the first place. But we acknowledge the fact that you are here. We acknowledge that you are here. It wasn't your country to take.
Is it your country?
It's all of our countries. But acknowledge it's all of ours. It's all of ours. It's all of ours.
It's my country.
That's fine.
It's not yours. It's not yours.
This is not the place. This is not the place. Sir?
It's my country.
Yes, sir, this is not the place.
It's everyone's country.
Everybody in this parade are saying we don't belong here.
Okay, no one can hear you at this point, so I'd like to actually have a conversation, and I'll ask for tolerance in this room, please. Tolerance. All right, Sinet?
What I'm saying is that I don't think the problem is with people on the ground, even the people sitting here. People who govern and politicians are determining the success of what is happening on the ground. We have rhetoric where people go on stages and say the colonists must go and we stole the land and we stole the mines. The Brits took the mines. Buddha never had mines. And we can't keep on having that rhetoric and move forward. Every time I switch on a television or I put on a radio and Julius Malema says that we don't belong here, and what is happening? It's a problem. You cannot preach reconciliation to one segment of the country and preach empowerment to the other segment.
All right.
There's a vast difference between, and I agree with you, there's a vast difference between rhetoric that's used to manipulate the population and sway people and the truth. Ne? And I would be interested in hearing how white people process the emotional baggage of what their ancestors did. I would be interested in trying to understand what it did to white families. How much silence did white people have to cope with? How did white people build a shield around themselves to be able to deal with the system in which whiteness operated all these years? That's an emotional conversation. That's a delicate conversation. I'd be willing to do the work of trying to unravel that, because right now as a black person, I'm trying to do the work of unraveling my own baggage, my own historical baggage. I think when white people start to do that work, then we'll start to begin the project of trying to understand how all of us belong to this place. But you can't erase history. We can't pretend the violence didn't happen. We can't pretend colonialism didn't happen. We can't pretend people weren't slaves. We can't pretend our people are not poor. It happened. It happened. I'd be willing to hear white people say, you know what, it was Kak trying to pretend that this situation was normal. But I'm not hearing white people do that work.
All right.
What would that be?
All right. When we return, a poetic moment. Don't go away.
South Africa is a fractured mirror, a paradox of schizophrenic selves who don't talk to one another, who coexist together but don't live with each other. And this is the time when you can become the greatest substance of your dreams unless you live in a shack and don't speak English and don't know what this poem means. Tell me how it's possible for people who walk on gold to not know how to read.
South Africa is an old-fashioned mutt who knows how to sing and knows even better how to cuss, who knows how to pray when she's about to run out of luck, who knows how to laugh really hard when the tears have run her into a rut, who knows that race is a farce because when the lights are off, everybody's There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of, I don't hear hope yet. I don't know about you, but I don't hear hope yet.
I hear it. I hear it. Just us being here, having this conversation together, getting to a space that we need to get to as a nation, it will take a very long time. It's not child's work. For me to sit and listen to Sunette, listen to Pierre, listen to Sisonke and to Lebo, and hear the various voices and digest the message that comes from them, I feel pained. I feel their pain. But at the same time, I feel there's hope because we're talking about it. We put a plaster on a gunshot wound in this country. That's what we did. And that needs to stop. We need to talk to each other and then come to a space of understanding.
Because you're with the EFF.
Yes, I am with the EFF.
Explain that to me.
Well, I explain in a simple fashion that in this country we've got more than 70% of the nation that's living in utter poverty. And if you go into the townships and especially in the squatter camps and you see how our children are living, we're talking about kids. We're not talking about black, white, color. We're talking about kids. So when I look at the economic freedom fighters, we are looking at changing this country to bring it into a social system where there will be no class, where the state can take control and we can live in a society where everybody can be brought up to the same level. The thing of the Rainbow Nation that did not work, reconciliation can only work if we both reconcile. You cannot have Nelson Mandela giving forgiveness for a racist group of people that oppressed black people in the apartheid era and say, let us forgive them. They don't come forward and say, yes, we accept your forgiveness, let's reconcile with each other. They don't do that. We still have people in the audience here. We still have people in the audience here, like a gentleman there when she was talking about the black people being more educated and can actually contest for a position. I heard a comment say, yeah, let's kill them. It's those comments that makes people to be killed on farms also. Because when you undermine a black person in this country longer, they are going to kill you.
I'm Myrtle Wetboy and I'm from the South African Domestic Workers Union. It's not about color. It's not about whether I'm a colored. It's whether I'm a human being. And I think we need to do that. Do you know the pain of a domestic worker? Do you know what it is to be isolated in the backyard of employers? To sit there when the employer go out with their beautiful cars and I remain in the backyard. I was there in the apartheid years. But one man came out and he forgave. And that time, when I was in the struggle, I did not say I was a colored. I did not say Mandela is black. We were fighting for freedom. That is what we were doing. I did not classify myself as a colored. And when Comrade Mandela came out, he said there's black and there's white. And since that day I walked that path. I am black. And I am proud of it. If we want to free ourselves, we must free ourselves from this color thing. We're not going to become free because we are bitter.
We are oppressed even in our working place. Our employers don't recognize us. We raise the children. But you find that at the end, you dismiss, you are stealing, my pant is missing, my sugar is missing.
There's a certain amount of people which wants to create a nation of unity. And then there's us, the Boers. We don't take part in this, and we're not going to. And we're not going to go away. and we're the rightful owners of this land. So, so that doesn't mean we doesn't see the sunshine over other people. Okay, if you go back in history, you would actually see that the Boers have negotiated with the tribal chiefs and the kings, and we have see them as equal, and we have give them their peace. Okay, now.
Carry on, we can hear you.
If we want